The initial brief that I went to for this project was the balance brief. The initial brief I went with for this project was the balance brief, but as the project's progressed, I don't really know which band to fall into. So the band I'd say I'd fall into is the one that offers me the highest grade. Right, on to my main bit. Hi, my name is Tom Perkins, and I'm going to be going through my game level. The thing I'm going to start off with first is my models and textures. What you can see here are clay renders, and then followed up by wireframe renders of my models and textures in 3ds Max, and then the textures are followed up in Photoshop. The reason why I started off with this first is because I want to start off on more of a positive note, due to the fact when I start whinging about my kismet in a little bit. But to start off with, all my models I've tried to have an element of bake down to them. It's a process I rely on quite heavily for this, at the very least, because I don't feel my texturing skills are as good as my modelling. I feel I'm a lot better modeller than I am texturer, and because of that I've tried to find a way to make my weakness a strength, so to speak. The software I've used to do this was XNormal, so what I would do is I would get a blank template start mesh in 3ds Max. I would make multiple copies of it, make different variations like you can see with the wall pieces, and then once I've done that, I'd export them into the software, bake them down, bake an ambient occlusion and a normal map from that, and from there I would start my textures. Grayscaling, sorry, grayscaling the normal map so that it started off me with some key details for me to do my texturing. So yeah, you can see my clays and wireframes as I'm progressing through. So on to the textures. The reason why they're all in Photoshop is because I had some technical difficulties prior to this submission. Overall, the theme in which my game is aimed at is a sci-fi theme, like a space station one, which I hope you can see in the metal-like textures and how the paints slowly wore away in certain areas, just slightly faded, so it's showing a progression over time. After our play testing that we did in class, I got some feedback. There were a few key points from the feedbacks. Lights were too dark. The tiles were a lot erratic in the gameplay, which meant that a player would often get stuck. Some other things like not too sure where. Pardon me again. Not too sure as where to go to progress with the storyline, so to speak. So to address them in the second version of my build, what I've done is I've tried to make all the grid for the modular pieces level to as level as I could, because I've made a lot of different pieces at separate points, so they had different heights. So I've tried balancing them out the best I can, but there are still some places. But the key areas where people were complaining with the doors, I've just simply removed the collision off the surrounding borders of the doors, so that a player can literally just walk through and the matinee will open the doors. So it looks as smooth a transition as I can get with the stuff I've got in. The key features of my game are a theme of losing your mind. Originally, it was going to be a kismeted thing through a post-process chain, and it's as you progressed, it slowly degrade to the point where the player just dies. There'd be like 5 tiers of insanity, and I would have 5 process chains. That's why later on you'll see I've got a few different other materials for my process chains, which I've used. Post-process chains, should I say. But the main feature of my game is it is linear, but with the post-process chain I have in it, it makes it quite unlinear. So it's linear but not linear, because there are key areas which a player has to interact with for progression, and the post-process chain affects them to a point where it makes a simple task a lot harder. As you'll see through the gameplay reel that will come up after this audio. Yeah, the way in which I've tried to keep the flow is by not having too much of my post-process chain. So on one hand I'm saying it's a good thing, but on the other hand I'm also saying too much of it can make the gameplay quite erratic. So by doing that, what I've done is I've put post-process volumes there, and I've set them to negate the effects of the post-process chain. So a player will go from volume to volume fine, but a key area where I want there to be a bit of messiness, so to speak, the post-process chain will interact. The game playability is trigger based, but like I said, with the post-process chain, the trigger is not as easy as you think to get to. On to like the technical achievements of my game. The post-processing chain will probably be the strongest thing. Kismet wise, I will go and have a lot more adventurous. Here you can see my gameplay demo started up, the video I've made of it. This is just me doing a basic run through of the level. Thing I should mention is I already know where the key is, which I haven't realised till I've watched it back. But the player originally would have to go all the way down to the end and come back. But there's not really much for me to say here. I've tried to attire to the aesthetic I wanted to keep. I've mentioned before about the post-processing chain causing a different mechanic for when you play the game. Noticed here that the floor's like transparent. Not got a clue why that is. It won't like that. It doesn't look like that when I press in-game detail. The one thing I should say about this game reel demo is that there is a bit of a time lag. I don't know why it just happened, and I can't seem to fix it through Bandicam. After the player's gone to the end room with the key and they've hit the terminal that stops all the sound effects, well, some of them, they then go back down the corridor and to where they originally turned left. They go straight down the lift, because they have to go turn the main power core and engine generator on. Once they've done this, it enables them to reach the end zone of the game practically, which normally they would go back up through the elevator, but because the elevator matinee wasn't working right, I inserted a teleporter so they can teleport there. But that adds another little gameplay element when you see the teleports, because then you have a multi-choice one, which allows you, with the post-processing chain, to make a mistake, and adds a bit more. With these two final events, with the main power core generator and the engines, what I was going to have was an object that you'd interact with to then power up the terminal to power them up, and there'd be like a event track on them, so it'd be like a power core that you twist to turn on. But I had a software issue with my desktop at the time, so I couldn't get around to putting it in. But it was ready to be implemented, it's just I couldn't get it in, unfortunately. The cool thing I've got down here is the lasers have post-process volume on them, so that when you hit them, you take damage. You have to hit them to get through, but I added that just because I thought you needed some danger aspect in the game, because other than the pistons, there's not much danger. When you've done those two, you'll see that I added a teleporter to get back up, because I realised the Kismet on my lift weren't working right. But you go to the teleporter, and then that teleporter takes you to the other teleporters, and it goes to a 3 teleporter choice, and with the post-process volume it makes it hard for you to pick. And then once you've picked your choice, it takes you to the end place, which is meant to be like the escape pod, and then that's where it cuts off, because that's where I have my game finish. So quite technical. When I open them up towards the end, to see there's quite a big node structure within them to create the effects that affect the player's screen and stuff. I also do other things like using alphas to make certain objects glow, so like make the walls look like they have a light in them even though they don't. Just little things that give off a sci-fi feel. With all my textures being modular, it's always a thing you face that that could become boring to look at after just seeing the same one. So what I've tried to do is make for each area a few different textures just to break each other up. Ideally I would have done a load of decals, but my time management got the better of me, so go into it and show you my materials and then the nodes within the materials. The nodes I thought were quite technical. It took me a while to find the right tutorials and to explain it in such a way. But the whole game was meant to have a certain aesthetic to it, like a certain feel. And I feel that with my post-processing and my sound effects and the linearity to a degree, all in kept with that feel of like a spooky space station. I could probably made it better with a few camera cutaways to give the essence like you're being chased, but then it'd probably get to the point where I'd have to put in an AI to chase you, and then I didn't understand how to do any of that. So again, it's one of them things I could have gone down that road, but I scrapped it because I didn't really understand how. Like I said before, I did multiple processing chain nodes, and here's one of them, a sepia tone one. So that's it basically for the materials wise. I think I move on to a bit of just showing you the overview of the level now. Just a quick camera in the viewport showing you the level and the level structure and layout, and then oh no, I thought I did a wireframe. I don't. It's straight to Kismet. Like I said before, the Kismets are all just touch Kismets and stuff. Bit simple, I know, but without them I wouldn't have had my gameplay. There's a comparable Kismet for the key, and then there was meant to be one for the doors, but that was before I put a teleporter in. But I've left the code in because if a player forgot to get the teleporter, then they've still hit the two variables that enable them to progress. Yeah, that's Kismet. That one, my Kismet. There's not really much Kismet other than the post-process chain. That's that difficult. It's all just triggers to hit sound nodes or movement effects. Other than the player health with the lasers, there's not much there. Finish off with just a quick wireframe view of my whole map. And that's it really. As far as my level goes. I tried to address the feedback I got for player feedback reviews. Yeah, I think the key thing for my game was the post-processing chain. I think without that the game would have been dull and there'd been nothing to it. So that's kind of the key cornerstone of my game. And like I said, I initially had plans to make it much more in depth, and it would have added a lot more gameplay, but with the constraints I couldn't help it. Not to whinge, I made the most of it. I still quite like it. If I were to do it again, I probably would do it the same way. Just I would obviously look into Unreal Script. But overall, I'm happy with my asset creation. The gameplay, I wish there were a bit more, but the restrictions, I couldn't do anything about it. So that's it. Yeah, the aesthetic I quite like. But I don't know how that would transfer to someone because I obviously know what I'm doing. I don't know how fluid it would be now for someone else to play. But yeah, that's me. Thank you for listening. One other thing before I end my presentation. One of the other key things I've just remembered from the player feedback was the scale of the actual space station itself was, they said, too big, like you were dwarfed. So one of the things I have done, where I can actually actively see, is I've directly changed the size, which took me a while because I had to fiddle with each actor in the meshes. But I've made everything scaled down. It sounds simple, but it took me a little while because everything were already in place with the lights and the triggers. But I've made that a much better scale now. And yeah, like I said, if I were to do it again, obviously I'd look more into the Unreal Script side so I can access the post-process chains better, because that would have given me the effect I were really wanting, but I didn't get that. But overall, I am quite happy with my work, and I feel like I've worked to at least a good quality by my own standards, if not anyone else's. That's all, so bye for now.